Happy Thursday, everybody. So excited to have you back. For those of you that are new, my name is Susan. I am a freelance fiction editor specializing in science fiction, fantasy, and romance. It is awesome to have you here. Today we're going to be talking about cover quotes. Now, so many people talk about covers, what should go into them, what they should look like, how they fit in the genre, and these are all great things, but they're usually talking about the artwork or the style or how it looks, how it's going to look on the shelf, everything like that. While that is something important to pay attention to, and you certainly want to dive into that if you're planning a cover right now, you also want to pay attention to what's on your cover, and by that I mean cover quotes. Cover quotes aren't something that you necessarily think about when you think of the components of a cover, but it is a vital part that really sends a signal to the reader. I guarantee if you look at all the books on your bookshelf, most of them have some sort of quote on the cover, and if they don't, it probably looks a bit empty to you. The only caveat to that being if it's such a massive name like George R. R. Martin or Nora Roberts where they don't need a quote anymore. That's a bit different. So I would highly recommend, as you're planning your cover, you want to make sure you're going to have quotes to put on the front for two reasons. The first reason being name recognition. It's a signal to the reader. It's basically a way to show your comp. Show if they liked this book, they'll most likely like your book. So for example, Chris Evans, I don't know if you can see this, you can look it up online. So Chris Evans, I'll admit I picked this up because the first chapter is awesome. If you haven't read this, I highly recommend. The second thing is it made me laugh that his name is Chris Evans. Chris Evans, the author, if you ever watch this, it made me chuckle and it got you a book sale out of it. But it was also your writing as well. In any case, at the top of this, it has an R.A. Salvatore quote. For anybody that's deep into the fantasy realm, has played D&D, anything like that, you are most likely going to recognize the name R.A. Salvatore. So to have a quote on here, specifically a quote that says, he does this differently, he does this well, and it's really awesome. It actually says, Chris Evans places the broadsword and sorcery archetypes squarely in a new and exciting environment. So for somebody like R.A. Salvatore to say, hey, not only did he do this well, he did it awesome and differently, which is exactly what anybody reading wants. I want my favorite book, but I want it to be a little bit different so that I can basically read the same book again. That is a beautiful thing, and it's a perfect signal to readers as far as what they're going to get, as well as to fans of R.A. Salvatore that they will probably enjoy this book. It's the same thing with Jennifer Estep. So, for example, she has an Alona Andrews quote. Now, Alona Andrews, obviously, fantasy romance together, so pretty much tells you what you're going to find in here, even if you've never heard of Jennifer Estep, which, again, all of these authors I highly recommend. It has a really good placement right here, so you'll be able to see it right away. It works with the cover. Definition of epic fantasy, exciting, original, long live the Winter Queen. It's powerful. It works really well. Again, showing readers if they like Alona Andrews, who is a very big name in urban and fantasy romance, you're most likely going to like this book as well. But it's not just about name recognition as far as comp titles. So those worked really well because if you liked this, then you'll like that. You don't necessarily have to have it where it's an exact one-to-one measure between the comps. So for example, Tessa Dare. Now, Tessa Dare, hopefully you've read. If you haven't, she's phenomenal. She has a Julia Quinn quote. This is also a comp, so maybe a bad example here, but more than anything, people recognizing Julia Quinn's name because of Bridgerton, because they liked the show, not necessarily her books. So people going into a store, seeing Tessa Dare's books, and seeing the name Julia Quinn on the front is going to have phenomenal power now. Now, granted, it's always had great power. Julia Quinn has been a powerhouse in historical romance for ages, but even more so now, people liking that show are going to see this quote and say, hey, I would probably like this book. Or, for example, Leviathan Wakes. So Leviathan Wakes is a sci-fi novel. Again, something I highly recommend, but it has a George R. R. Martin quote on the top. So it's not necessarily a one-to-one comp of, well, if you liked George R. R. Martin's epic fantasy, you'll like this epic space opera. If you don't like science fiction, it's probably not going to be a one-to-one comp for you. But he is giving his stamp of approval, so basically it's saying this might be something that you like and giving James S.A. Corey that name recognition to push into the market. I got to put all these books up and down. Finally, it doesn't even necessarily need to be an author quote that you have on the front for your cover quote. It can be a trusted source. So it could be a book reviewer, it could be a well-known website, it could be a magazine. So for example, Legend by Marie Lu has a New York Times quote on the front, and it has an Entertainment Weekly quote on the back. So she has a lot of power going into these quotes because that is a very recognizable brand. Both of those are very recognizable brands. And the quote itself not only tells you about the book, but just that name gives the book the credibility for you to pick it up and most likely buy it, as I did. So now let's dive into the what. So you have an idea of why you should have the quote on there, what it should look like, everything like that, and who you might want to be targeting. Comps or well-recognized sources that will resonate with your market, with your readership, to be able to show them, hey, this is something that you'd love, even if you've never heard of me before, or even if this might be a genre that's a bit out of your comfort zone, they loved it and you're gonna love it too. But within that, you also want to strategize what you want the quote to be. So the authors are going to give you a quote. It will probably be a couple of lines long, and then they're going to most likely say, hey, take out of this what you will and fit it onto your cover. So then you want to make sure that you are picking the vital part of that quote so that it's most likely short and sweet, or if it's not, like the Chris Evans quote, it has that powerful message that's showing why that quote is important, not just who it's from. It paints a picture for the reader of what's different and why they're going to love this, in addition to that name recognition, that branding that that person or that publication is bringing to your book. So for example, you saw the Chris Evans quote. It is a bit lengthy. For another example, you can look at the Jade City by Fonda Lee. Read it all the way through. You can see these quotes are very short. They're very to the point, but they're extremely powerful. Scott Lynch and Lucky Ken Liu, having them say that it's gripping, stylish, and action-packed, vivid, and tautly described. You can't get better recommendations from that. So it's quick, it's powerful, it's showing what you want, it balances the cover well, and it's selling those books. I do want to take a moment to say here, though, having more quotes doesn't necessarily mean better. So if you get 15 quotes from people, but it's no one that anybody recognizes, that's not going to have near the power as if you got 2 quotes from either comps or reputable sources that people really recognize, that they resonate with, or that they follow. So this is something you want to consider as you're moving forward as well. You don't want to just try and get tons of quotes so that you can sort of piece together what you want it to say on the cover. You want genuine feedback from a reputable source that you can put on there that's going to resonate with your market and help sell books. And finally, the how. The how is very simple. It's networking. And it's something that you can start today. You don't even necessarily yet need to have a book for them to quote or anything like that. Start reaching out, start making contacts, just interact with them on social media. Figure out who your ideal connections are, who might be your comps in the future, or if you already have a book, who you'd like your comps to be, and slowly approach that. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Making just a genuine connection where you can earnestly go to them and say, hey, I'd be honored if you would quote my book. There's also, obviously, if you have an agent, and again, a throwback to my do's and don'ts on getting an agent video a while back. You should look at having an agent, whether you're traditionally published or self-published, for a variety of reasons. This is one of them. So if you're self-published, you have an agent that's helping you with foreign rights or movie rights, not necessarily the print and ebook because you're in control of that. They still have a lot of connections in the publishing world. So they might have authors that you might not necessarily be able to connect with within their literary agency, where they can reach out to their agent, whoever that may be, and say, hey, would they have some time to give this quote, or would they be willing to take a look at this? So it's in that way as well. Or many times it's a trade-off. So you might reach out to somebody who is a comparable title, a comparable author to you, might be a bit bigger than you are. That's always the goal, because obviously you want to reach out to their market. You want a new side of things that's maybe a bit bigger, reaching out to more people. And maybe you can do a trade-off. Hey, would you be willing to give me an honest quote on my book? I would also love to, either give you a quote, or maybe I can beta read. You don't want to just be going out and asking people for things. People are very busy. As you very well know as an author, time is short, and most of that time needs to be focused on your own writing, marketing, publishing of your own books. So make sure you're honoring what you're asking them to do and either making it a genuine connection or being able to give something in return, something in that way. I want to emphasize though, you always want to ask for an honest review. You don't want to make them feel like they have to give you a good review, or you can certainly ask them and say, I would love to see if you'd be interested in giving me a quote. I'd love to send you a free copy. And then that takes the pressure off. If they don't want to send you a quote, they don't feel comfortable, then they don't have to. So it doesn't have to send you a negative review either, because not everybody's going to love your book, regardless of how close it may be to theirs or how perfect of a comp you think it may be. So you want to make sure to be as open and honest as possible, honoring their time, the commitment it's going to take, and giving them the ability to make sure to give you a genuine quote that will hopefully be able to make a perfect addition to your cover. Hopefully this helps as you are starting to plan your cover or as you're diving into getting reviews for your first book. If you have any questions, I would absolutely love to hear from you. If there's anything specific you want to know more on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. It really helps the channel. And until next time, keep writing.